It feels like everywhere you turn, AI is popping up. I mean, AutoGPT is writing our grocery lists now.
Right.
Microsoft Copilots like our work, BFF.
Yeah.
And don't even get me started on everyone talking about these personalized AI agents.
Wow.
It's obvious that LLMs, or large language models, are integrating into our lives crazy fast.
It is pretty amazing how fast we've gone from those basic chatbots to, like, AI that's actually tailored to each of us.
Yeah.
But it makes sense in a way, right?
Totally.
We're already used to personalized experiences online. Amazon suggesting what we should buy, Spotify making those playlists for us. So now it's just, like, spreading to even more parts of our lives.
Exactly. Imagine if we had education that actually knew how you learn best.
Oh, wow.
Or healthcare that gave you advice based on your, specific medical history.
Yeah.
The potential to really learn quickly and effectively is huge. Which brings us to what we're diving into today.
Okay.
We're going to unpack this recent research paper that gives us a unified framework to understand these personalized LLMs.
That's right. This paper goes beyond, just explaining what LLMs are.
Yeah.
It actually digs into how they can be personalized for different people and different uses.
Okay, so not just LLMs in general, but specifically how they can be personalized.
Right.
Did the researchers find, like, a particular way to think about this personalization?
They did, actually.
Right.
They found two main categories for how we're using personalized LLMs.
Interesting.
The first one is called direct personalized text generation.
Okay.
This is all about creating text that's like perfectly tailored to a specific user. So think of it kind of like a chatbot that learns to communicate just like you do.
Oh, so instead of a generic bot, it would be like talking to a, digital version of myself.
Exactly.
Cool.
But there are definitely some challenges with this approach.
Like what?
Like, it's really hard to evaluate how well the LLM actually captures your unique voice.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because there aren't many data sets out there that have real user-written examples to compare to.
Makes sense.
So that makes it tricky.
So what's the other category of personalized LLMs then?
Well, the other side of the coin is what's called downstream task personalization.
Okay.
And this is where we use personalized information to make other AI systems work better. It's less about the AI sounding like you and more about it using what it knows about you to just be more effective.
So instead of mimicking me, it's just using what it knows about me to do its job better.
Right.
Could you give an example?
Sure.
Where the focus isn't really on the generated text itself?
Absolutely. Think about those movie recommendation systems.
Okay.
They analyze what you've watched to suggest, films you might like.
Right.
But they don't try to sound like you when they give you those suggestions.
I get it.
It's all about using that personalized data to improve those recommendations.
Yeah.
So there's a subtle difference there.
I see. So one side is really focused on making outputs that are like a mirror of the user. And the other side is using user data to just make the AI better at its job.
Right.
No matter how it talks. Okay, I'm starting to see the difference. And I think the key to both of those approaches is definitely the data.
The data, yeah.
We have to give the LLMs the right information to help them,
Yeah, to understand us.
understand us, in quotes.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about that. What kind of information do we need to personalize these LLMs?
Sure.
What are they building blocks, so to speak?
Well, we can break the data down into a few main types.
Okay.
We start with static attributes,
Okay.
which is just your basic information that doesn't really change. So your age, your gender, your location.
So it's like building a profile. You start with those fundamentals. What comes next?
Then we add your interaction history.
Okay.
And this is all about what you do online. The purchases you make, the articles you read, the videos you watch.
Right.
It kind of shows your interests and behaviors.
So now the profile's getting more dynamic.
Yeah.
It's not just who you are,
Right.
but what you do online. Anything else?
The most revealing data is the user-written text.
Oh, interesting.
So emails, messages, social media posts.
Right, right.
This gives us insight into your unique communication style.
So we're taking into account not just what you do, but how you express yourself.
Exactly.
It seems like that could be like a goldmine for personalization.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, yeah.
And then finally, we have pairwise human preferences.
Okay.
And this is where you give direct feedback.
Gotcha.
Like picking your favorite response from a few different options.
Okay.
So it's a very clear way
Yeah.
to tell the LLM what you like.
It's like giving the AI a direct line to your preferences.
Exactly. Now, it's not just about the type of data, though.
Okay.
It's also about how we apply it.
So, like, how we use it.
Right, we call this personalization granularity.
Granularity. Is that kind of like zooming in and out on a map?
You got it.
Wow.
At the most granular level, we have user-level personalization.
Okay.
So think about like online shop where the recommendations are based on, your specific browsing history.
Right. That level of personalization feels super important for stuff where individual preferences matter a lot.
Right.
Like shopping or getting job recommendations or in healthcare.
Absolutely. But sometimes, we don't have enough data to personalize at that individual level.
Okay.
So that's where persona-level personalization comes in.
Okay.
We group users with shared characteristics and tailor to like a broader persona.
So instead of like John Smith who loves sci-fi and documentaries, it's like people who enjoy complex narratives and factual content.
Exactly.
But wouldn't that run the risk of like stereotyping people?
That's a good point. It's a trade-off.
Yeah.
We're using broader categories to personalize when we don't have much user-specific data. But we always have to be careful about potential biases.
I see.
So it's a balancing act.
Okay, and what's the like widest zoom level?
Well, the broadest level is called global preference alignment. Here, we're not focusing on like individuals or groups, but on aligning LLMs with general human values and social norms.
So it's about making sure that the AI is doing what's good for society as a whole.
Exactly.
I like that.
It's about making AI systems that are responsible and helpful for everyone.
I get it.
Now, you might be wondering, like, how do we actually teach these LLMs to be personalized?
That's a great question. We've talked about like what kind of data we need and the different levels of personalization, but how do we actually put it all together? Like, what are the tools we can use?
Well, there are a few different techniques.
Okay.
And each one has, its own strengths and weaknesses.
Got it.
One approach that's pretty popular is retrieval augmented generation.
Okay.
Or RAG for short.
Yeah, right.
It uses your personal information, kind of like an external knowledge base.
So if I was asking the LLM for like music recommendations,
Yeah.
RA would go look at my Spotify playlist to see what I've been jamming to.
Precisely. It's basically like giving the LLM access to your personal files to help it figure out its responses.
Got it.
Now, there are other methods out there, too.
Like what?
Well, there's prompting.
Oh, yeah, I remember you mentioning that. Like telling the LLM to write an email in the style of my name.
Exactly. That's prompting.
Okay.
It's about giving those specific instructions to the LLM that, add your personal touch.
That's interesting.
And then there's representation learning.
Okay.
Which is where we actually take the information about you and kind of embed it directly into the structure of the LLM.
So instead of just having the LLM look at my files, like with ERG, or giving it instructions with those prompts, it's like the LLM actually learns about me.
Right. It internalizes that knowledge.
Whoa, that's pretty mind-blowing. It's like the LLM is building a little model of me inside itself.
Exactly.
Wow.
And then finally, we have reinforcement learning from human feedback.
Okay.
Or RLHF.
RLHF, okay.
And this is where we train the LLM to be in line with your preferences by giving it direct feedback.
So we tell it what we like and don't like.
Yeah.
And it learns to, like, make us happy.
Right, basically.
But wouldn't that be kind of dangerous?
Oh, how so?
Like, what if the AI only tells me stuff I want to hear?
Yeah.
Even if it's not actually true or helpful for me?
That's a very insightful question.
Oh, okay.
And it actually leads us perfectly into the next part of our deep dive today.
Ooh, I like where this is going.
Now, all of this might seem, pretty theoretical.
Yeah.
But these techniques are already being used in real-world applications.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Okay, so let's get into it.
Where are we seeing personalized LLMs actually making a difference?
Well, one of the most promising areas is in education.
Ooh. Yeah.
Imagine AI tutors that can give you personalized feedback on your work.
That would be awesome.
Right. Suggest learning materials that fit your style.
Yeah.
And just adapt to how you learn best.
That sounds incredible. Are there any examples of this in action already?
There are, yeah.
Cool.
Platforms like EduChat are already using LLMs to make those personalized learning experiences.
Interesting.
We're also seeing personalized LLMs being used in healthcare, too.
Oh, wow.
Helping with diagnoses, giving personalized treatment recommendations, and even helping people manage their health conditions.
That's amazing. But how do we make sure that those healthcare AI are accessible to everyone?
That's a really important question.
Yeah.
And it's something researchers and developers are working on.
It's a big one.
Yeah.
And it doesn't stop there, right?
No, not at all.
Personalized LLMs are being used in finance,
Yeah.
for giving advice, in coding, to make AI coding assistants, even in search engines,
Right.
to give us personalized results.
Exactly. It feels like personalized AI is going to be everywhere soon.
It does feel that way, but
Yeah.
before we get too excited about the possibilities,
Yeah.
I think we need to talk about the challenges and the potential downsides.
We do. It's important to consider those too.
So let's do that.
Okay.
Let's shift gears and talk about the road ahead.
All right.
What are the big hurdles that we still need to figure out?
Well, there are a few big ones.
Okay.
Let's get into them.
So we just finished talking about how personalized LLMs could, change everything from education to healthcare. And now I'm really curious to dig into those techniques that make it all possible.
We do. It's exciting stuff.
Yeah, it's like we've got this amazing toolbox,
Right.
but we need to know how to use those tools.
Exactly.
Let's start with retrieval augmented generation,
Okay.
or RAG.
RAG. Yeah.
It sounded pretty straightforward in part one, like just giving the LLM access to my files.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling it's a bit more complicated than that.
You're right. It is a little more complex.
Oh, okay, good.
So within RAG, there are actually different ways to retrieve information.
Oh.
So one approach is called sparse retrieval, and this uses simpler methods like TF-IDF or BM25.
Could you remind me how those work again?
Of course.
Oh, my dense retrieval might be a better fit for personalized LLMs.
Sure. So think of sparse retrieval like searching for something in a library using keywords. TF-IDF and BM25 are basically algorithms that look for exact matches between the words in your query and the words in the documents.
Gotcha.
It's fast and efficient,
Yeah.
but it can miss some of the nuances of meaning.
So it might miss information that's relevant even if the words aren't exactly the same?
Exactly.
I see.
That's where dense retrieval comes in. This approach actually uses deep neural networks to create richer representations of your data.
Interesting.
It goes beyond just matching words to actually trying to understand the meaning behind them.
So it's like the difference between using a basic dictionary and having a conversation with a language expert.
Precisely.
That makes a lot more sense.
Well, dense retrieval basically lets the LLM find more relevant information, even when the words don't match up perfectly.
Gotcha.
It's a much more sophisticated approach.
It sounds like it.
Yeah, and it's definitely better suited for something as complex as personalization.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So ARG is all about bringing in external information.
Okay.
But what about the techniques that actually modify the LLM itself?
Oh, yeah.
Making it more tailored to the user.
Right.
That brings us to the other side of the toolbox.
Okay.
We've got prompting,
Okay.
representation learning, and reinforcement learning from human feedback.
And each of those is about actually changing the LLM.
Right.
Not just how it uses data.
Exactly.
Okay, let's start with prompting.
Right.
That seems like the most direct way to influence what the LLM generates.
It is.
We talked about this earlier, right?
Right.
It's about carefully crafting those prompts that contain your information and guiding the LLM to give us personalized outputs.
Exactly.
Like we could tell the LLM to write a social media post in your typical style.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, but it sounds like there are even more nuanced ways to use prompting.
There are, yeah.
Like what?
Well, there's persona-based prompting.
Okay.
Where we actually give the LLM a specific role to play.
Interesting.
So we could say something like, write a summary as if you're a historian.
Oh, cool.
Or compose a tweet as if you're a marketing guru.
So instead of trying to make it sound like me, we're giving it a specific character to play.
Exactly. It's like we're giving the LLM a costume and a script.
I like that analogy.
It can really change the tone and style of the output.
Yeah.
Quite drastically.
That's a really clever way to guide the LLM without needing a ton of data about me.
It is, yeah.
What other kinds of prompting are there?
Well, there's also profile augmented prompting.
Okay.
This is where we use the LLM's own abilities to kind of enrich the information that we're feeding into it.
So instead of just giving it my raw data, we're using the LLM to make that data more meaningful.
Precisely. So, for example, we could use the LLM to summarize your browsing history.
Interesting.
Or maybe extract some key interests from your emails.
Okay.
This pre-processing step basically gives the LLM a better understanding of you.
Gotcha.
Before it even starts generating any output.
So we're using the AI to help us personalize the AI.
Exactly. It's a bit meta.
It is.
But it's surprisingly effective.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Now, moving on to representation learning.
Okay.
This is where we go even further.
Okay.
And we actually embed information about you into the structure of the LLM itself.
So instead of just accessing external data, like with RAG,
Right.
or getting instructions through those prompts,
Yeah,
the LLM is actually like internalizing that knowledge about the user.
precisely.
Wow.
One way to do this is with full parameter fine-tuning,
Okay.
where we basically adjust all of the LLM's parameters to be in line with your data.
That sounds super powerful,
It is.
but also probably really computationally expensive.
You're right, it can be very resource intensive. Which is why we also have parameter efficient fine-tuning.
Okay.
This focuses on just adjusting a subset of the most relevant parameters.
So it's a trade-off
Right.
between really deep personalization and keeping the computational costs manageable.
Exactly.
It seems like finding that balance is going to be more and more important as these models keep getting bigger.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then there's embedding learning.
Right. So this creates what we call user embeddings.
User embedded.
Yeah, and these are like dense vectors that represent your preferences and characteristics.
So it's like a digital fingerprint of your personality.
Exactly.
And the LLM can understand that.
Right. So with embedding learning, we're not actually changing the whole LLM.
Okay.
We're just creating this unique representation of the user that the LLM can then use for personalization.
Okay, so we've got RA,
Mm-hmm.
we've got prompting,
Yes.
we've got representation learning.
Uh-huh.
That leaves us with one last technique, right?
Right. RLHF,
RLHF.
reinforcement learning from human feedback.
Right, this is the one where we train the LLM to match our preferences
Yes.
by giving it feedback.
Exactly.
Like we're teaching it what we like and dislike, and it learns to please us.
That's a good way to put it.
But doesn't that run the risk of creating, like, an echo chamber?
Oh, that's an interesting point.
Like, what if the AI only tells me what I want to hear,
Yeah.
even if it's not accurate or good for me?
That is a valid concern.
Yeah.
RLHF is definitely a really powerful tool
Mm-hmm.
for shaping how the LLM behaves.
Right.
But we need to be careful.
Okay.
We have to make sure that the feedback we give is balanced
Right.
and that the LLM sees different points of view.
So it's not just about training the AI to, like, make us happy.
Right.
It's about training it to challenge us.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
Good.
So we've covered a lot.
Bravo.
RAG, prompting, representation learning, and RLHF.
That's a lot to take in.
It is.
It's pretty amazing how many ways there are to personalize these LLMs.
It is, but are all of these techniques, like, equally effective?
That's a great question. And the answer is, unfortunately, it depends.
It depends.
It depends on a few things.
Okay.
Like
Right.
the type of task you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
how much data you have about the user,
Right.
and even the specific LLM architecture.
So there's no, like, one-size-fits-all approach?
Right. There's a lot of nuance.
Yeah.
And it takes some experimenting to find the best approach.
And that's what makes it so interesting.
Exactly. It's a field that's always changing.
Yeah.
Researchers are always finding new and better ways to personalize these AI systems.
That's so cool, but I think it's time to bring it back down to earth a bit.
Yeah, good idea.
Let's talk about how these techniques are actually being used in the real world.
All right, let's do it.
I think that's what our listeners are really interested in.
I think so too.
We talked about personalized education and healthcare in part 1.
Yes.
What are some actual examples of these techniques in action? So we've explored this crazy potential of personalized LLMs.
This is pretty wild.
Like, imagine having AI tutors that adapt to how you learn,
Yeah.
or healthcare systems that give you custom treatment plans.
That'll be amazing.
It's mind-blowing stuff, but
Yeah.
before we get too carried away,
Yeah.
we need to talk about the challenges.
We do.
What are some of the downsides we should be thinking about as this tech keeps developing?
Well, one of the biggest hurdles is what we call the cold start problem.
The cold start problem.
Yeah. It's basically like, how do you personalize for a user when you don't have much data about them?
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's like trying to, recommend a book to someone who's never even been in a library.
Right.
You have no idea where to start.
It seems like that would be a major roadblock,
It is.
especially for new users or in situations where data is just scarce.
Definitely.
How are researchers trying to solve this?
Well, there are a few promising approaches.
Okay.
One of them is called Persona DB.
Persona DB.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it involves creating like these hierarchical user personas from limited data.
So instead of trying to build a whole profile from scratch,
Right.
you start with broader categories
Uh-huh.
and then get more specific as you gather more info.
Exactly. It's kind of like using that general knowledge about, different types of readers
Yeah.
to make some initial recommendations
Mm-hmm.
and then fine-tuning as you learn more about their specific preferences.
So, like, if I'm into mysteries,
Right.
it might recommend some Agatha Christie.
Exactly.
And then as it learns more about me,
Yeah.
it could suggest some more obscure authors.
Exactly. And PersonaDB actually takes it a step further.
Yeah.
It uses information from similar users
Yeah.
to fill in those gaps.
So it's kind of like
Yeah.
asking your friends for book recommendations.
Yeah, exactly.
When you're trying out a new genre.
That's like a collaborative approach.
I like that.
Yeah.
Are there any other ways people are tackling the cold start problem?
There are, yeah.
Cool.
Another approach is to actually generate synthetic data.
Synthetic data.
So researchers are using LLMs to basically create like artificial user profiles.
Whoa, so they're making up data.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah.
They're creating realistic but fake profiles to kind of jumpstart that personalization process.
That's a really interesting idea.
Yeah, it's pretty clever.
But it also sounds kind of risky.
Oh, how so?
Like, how can we be sure that this made-up data actually reflects how real people behave?
Yeah, that's a good point.
What if it introduces new biases or inaccuracies?
That's definitely a big concern.
Yeah.
Making sure that these synthetic data sets are diverse and high quality is a big challenge.
Okay.
Researchers are working on ways to create synthetic data that's both representative and reliable, but it's definitely still an ongoing area of research.
So it's not a perfect solution.
Not yet.
But it could be a way to make personalization work even when we don't have a lot of real data?
Exactly.
Okay, I get it. What other challenges are researchers working on?
Well, another big one is privacy.
Privacy. Yeah.
If LLMs know so much about us,
Right.
how do we make sure that our data is being protected and used responsibly?
Yeah, that's a big one for me.
Okay.
I'm always a little freaked out about how much info these systems are collecting
I get it.
and what they're doing with it.
Yeah.
Like, how can I be sure that companies are actually protecting my data
Right.
and not just using it to try to sell me more stuff?
That's a totally valid concern.
Yeah.
And it's something that, researchers and developers are thinking very carefully about.
Okay.
LLMs can be vulnerable to privacy breaches,
Right.
even when we use those anonymization techniques.
No, even if they take out my name
Yeah.
and other identifying info,
Mm-hmm.
the LLM could still figure out who I am based on my data.
It's possible, yeah.
That's scary.
It is a little bit, which is why
Yeah.
we're putting so much effort into developing privacy-preserving techniques for LLMs.
Okay.
And then there's also the issue of, like, adversarial attacks.
Adversarial attack.
Yeah, that's where someone tries to, like, trick the LLM
Oh, oi.
into revealing personal information.
So like hacking into it.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
It's a constant battle to stay one step ahead
Right.
of the people who want to misuse this technology.
It sounds like a tough balancing act.
It is.
Trying to give users that personalized experience,
Right.
but also keeping their data safe.
Exactly. It's like walking a tightrope.
I like that analogy.
We want to give people a tailored experience,
Yeah.
but we also need to make sure their data is secure.
Makes sense.
Finding that balance is really important for building trust
Yeah.
and making sure AI is developed ethically.
And speaking of ethical development,
Right.
are there other concerns we should be aware of?
Yeah.
As these personalized LLMs become more common?
Definitely. One of the biggest ones is bias.
Bias. Okay.
So these systems could potentially perpetuate
Yeah.
or even amplify existing biases in society.
Right.
If the data used to train the LLM is biased,
Yeah.
then the outputs could also be biased,
Yeah.
which could lead to unfair or discriminatory outcomes.
So it's not just about protecting data.
No,
It's about making sure that the AI itself is fair.
exactly.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Well, it starts with being very careful about the data we use to train these models.
Okay.
We need to make sure it's diverse and representative,
Yeah.
and that we identify and fix any potential biases.
So it's a multi-pronged approach.
It is.
You've got to be careful about the data, the algorithms,
Yeah.
and how these systems are actually used.
Exactly. It's a big challenge.
Are there any other challenges on the horizon that we should be thinking about?
Yeah, there's one more I'd like to mention.
Okay.
It's multimodality.
Intermodality. Okay.
So most of what we've talked about today focuses on text.
Right.
But the world isn't just text.
Yeah.
We experience the world through sight, sound, touch, taste.
It's true. It's not just words.
Exactly.
So how do we create personalized LLMs that understand all of that?
That's the big question.
Yeah.
That's the next frontier for personalized AI.
Wow.
It means developing new architectures,
Okay.
new training methods, new ways of evaluating these systems.
It sounds like a huge undertaking.
It is.
But can you imagine?
Yeah.
An AI assistant that not only understands what you say,
Right.
but also what you like to see.
Your musical tastes.
Your emotions.
Exactly.
That's incredible.
It's an exciting vision.
It is.
But it's also pretty daunting.
Yeah, it feels like we're just starting to understand what's possible.
We are. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. From those basic concepts to the cutting-edge techniques.
And the challenges ahead.
It's a lot, but I think it's important to remember.
What's that?
That personalized AI is ultimately about helping people. It's about making our lives better and more fulfilling.
That's a great point to end on.
I think so.
This deep dive has been amazing.
It has.
And I'm sure our listeners have learned a ton.
Me too.
About and the challenges of personalized LLMs.
It's a fascinating field.
It is.
And it's changing so quickly.
It is. I'm excited to see what the future holds.
Me too. There's so much potential.
There is.
But we need to make sure we're developing and using this tech responsibly.
Right. We all have a role to play.
We do.
Well said. To our listeners,
yeah,
stay curious, stay engaged.
Keep learning.
Keep asking those big questions.
Absolutely.
The future of AI is being shaped right now.
It is.
And we all have a part in it.
That's right.
Until next time, happy exploring.